Alright guys, so here we go. I think we left off with the motors last time, so I got the motors all prepped up and ready to go. And I'll show you how I mount those up. I've already got 3 of them mounted on here because I don't think you need to repetitively see me mount every single motor, just like when I soldered the motors in the last video. And like I said, I'm not going to edit any of this. I'm just uploading straight raw footage for you guys to see, so that like there's no steps missed, hopefully. And I don't know how much we'll squeeze into this video because I want to keep them to like 20 minutes long so nobody's bored out of their skull. So I don't always necessarily use the stock screws that come with the motors. I choose one that just has like 4 or 5 threads sticking out like so, and I choose to use all 4 of them instead of using one that's a little bit longer, because that way it kind of equals out on the weight. Some guys only use 2. I prefer to use all 4, but you just need like 5 threads sticking out because that's all that's really all the threading that's inside the motor anyway. So you know, you just cover those threads in there, and then you're sure that your screw's not hitting anything inside of there. Another thing, if you're using these LD power motors, keep in mind that they are directional, so you have to place them correctly on the frame for the props to spin. And if you're using the Astro X frame, it does have a top and bottom. It has the little chafed out holes here that these screws are supposed to go into for the flight controller. But since we're using the Matek soft mount screw, you know, we're not going to be able to use this. But these plastic, we're going to use the plastic ones to keep everything soft mounted, and they kind of sit down in those holes a little bit, so it's kind of cool. Some people say that's going to take away from the strength, but I don't know, maybe a little bit because you're taking some meat out of there. But this is a 4mm frame, and it's pretty freaking strong. So anyway, let me show you how I mount up the motors. If I can do it here in camera, on camera. Let me get it lined up here. What I do is I get one screw in there so I can see what's going on, and then line up the hole and get that screw going in there. Oops, I wasn't in camera, sorry. Get one screw in there and then line up the hole and get that one screw going on in there like so, right? Then what I'll do is line up the holes with all the slots that I need to, and then tighten that screw down so that I'm not chasing this motor around trying to get the other screws in. And like I said, I do use Loctite, blue Loctite. Use the red and you're not getting them back out. And I just barely touched the screw in there. I mean, just barely, just a teeny little bit. And so now I have these lined up, I can stick this in there real easily. And for me, I mean, if you have bigger, and then I loosen this one back up just a little bit so that the other 2 screws will drop in there nice and easy. And of course, I just dropped one on the floor. Well, we'll grab that in a second. And I use these I use this Align tool set. I've had these things forever, and it has everything to do the quad, and the things plug in there. It's freaking awesome. But for the motors and most of the screws, I don't even put the handle on because I have these big old beefy meat. I've been working with my hands all my life, so my hands are like freaking vices. Some guys have even picked up my Tyrannus, and I have my springs like custom loaded, beyond loaded, because they're like, how can you fly with this thing? I can't even move the sticks. And then I pick up theirs and I can't even feel the sticks. But anyway, it is what it is. So I don't want to over tighten these at all, so I just use the little handle thing, because like I said, I've been working with my hands all my life, and my hands are like freaking vices. So that is more than plenty tight enough with that little bit of Loctite and all 4 screws, so that doesn't, that motor's, I've never lost a motor. Let's put it that way. I've had a screw or 2 come out here and there, I'm sure everybody has, but I've never lost a motor. So there you go. That's how I mount up the motor. Get one lined up and then tighten it down so you can see the holes, so you're not chasing the motor around and fiddling around and trying to get the the screws in there. Hopefully that's a good tip for somebody that's having a problem mounting up the motors. The LD powers are directional, so remember they have the little arrows on them so you can see which direction they're going, so make sure you got your prop direction going the right way. And if you're using the Astro frame, it has a top and bottom. So there's that. And I prepped this frame, like I said in the last video. I thought this was the original frame, but it wasn't, so I took it to my shop and I chafed the edges with my Dremel, which I did off camera. I'm sure you guys can figure out how to do that. Or if you don't want to use a power tool, I suggest a set of these. These things are cheap as hell and they're awesome. I would get them no matter what, because they're great for all kinds of stuff on the builds. And I even chafe inside my little battery strap areas. Anywhere there's going to be a strap, like on this frame, you can strap a GoPro on top and it has a battery strap area there. So I take this little rat tail and just run it in those to get those edges off. You can see in there. Since I've been doing this, I've rarely ever broke a battery strap. Before I did this, the sharp edges, even after cornering a lot, it would break the strap and I'd fling it back. I'd flung one off in the middle of a race one time and I was really bummed out. So ever since I've been doing that, I don't think I've broke a single battery strap without, unless I crashed, because it doesn't cut it anymore. Same thing with the arms. Even if I use tape, but if you're using shrink wrap or whatever on the arms and you don't chafe the arms, at least a little bit in here where you're going to put it on, this will cut, it'll cut the tape and it'll cut the zippy ties or whatever you're going to use on there, shrink wrap, whatever. So there's that. The other thing that kind of bummed me out, buying the unfortunately not buying the original thing that I thought I was going to build, the screws that came with it. They only gave me 7 of one size of the standoff screw and then 3 of the screws for the cross member that goes on the top, and I'll show you how this goes together in a second. They did come with these standoffs here, but luckily I happen to have some of these beautiful red ones instead that I'm gonna stick on here to give it a little bling. And what I do with these standoffs, like I use these pretty much on all the bottom of my standoffs on my bottom mount batteries, because that nice big head on there helps me keep the battery lined up on the bottom when I use these on there. And then what I do is I pick a top screw so that the screws almost meet on the standoff, so that the screw fills the whole standoff. So it makes it stronger and the threads won't rip out. If I use one that's too short in here, these screws can rip out. The threads will rip out of this soft aluminum. So I make sure I have them long enough to fill up I'll sacrifice the 1.5 gram or whatever that adds to it to add the strength. The standoff won't bend as easy, and the threads won't pull out so easy. So that being said, let's stick these standoffs on here real quick, because what I like to do, these knurled standoffs, you don't even really have, you can just twist them, well, me anyway, I just twist them on by hand and they never come loose, because it said my fingers are like freaking sausages. So, I'm going to squeeze as much as I can into this video to show you guys. My hat's off to those guys that do the build videos consistently. Building for me is almost like a meditation. I just kind of sit down and go through it, and having to like plan everything out and have something laid out to show you guys in a neat sequence so it's not confusing and whatever is pretty trying, I must say. I'm dying to fly this quad with this frame, and I'll show you why I chose this frame in a minute. And the new LD power motors that Yuki sent me are freaking, I know they're going to be absolutely phenomenal. So it's kind of killing me to organize everything and stick it all together for you guys and do it in an organized fashion. Like what's his name, Ernesto Astro, the Flight Club guy. He's been doing videos forever, and he really does a nice job of laying everything out, and I don't know how he does it. That would drive me crazy. So this is the best I can do. So anyway, what I like to do is we're going to mock up this whole frame so I can see all my electronics and where I want to lay everything out and how I want to do everything. before we start soldering anything together, so I know how it's all going to go together. And this is, I'll show you now part of the reason why I chose this frame. Well, first of all, we have the Matek board here with the soft mounts, and like I said, we can't use the screws that, obviously can't use the screws that came with this Astro X frame. But what I do is I just dummy it up with a couple of screws here and make the little stack to stick in here, so that we can kind of measure everything out and see where I want to stick everything and plan everything out. Now on a bigger build, like if you have, you know, the QAVR or one of an Alien or whatever frame where you got tons of room, it's not quite as this isn't quite as a crucial step as it is for some of these tighter builds. So I'm just going to thread a couple of these in there just a little bit to hold it still. Oh, bumped the camera, sorry. Hope nobody got seasick. Just thread them in there a little bit to kind of hold that, so it's in place so we can see where everything goes. And then this little canopy is really easy to put together and really cool, and this is part of the reason I chose this frame, is because of the way this was all the way this all goes together and kind of cross members and braces itself together in there. So you have these two little side pieces, and this little guy just slips right in here into that side piece. The other side piece slips on here like so. And then what I did was just I want to use these bigger bolts in here, excuse me for a second, so that I have like the same consistent screws all the way around the frame in case I need to do something to it. So then we're just gonna thread the top cross member on here a little bit, and that kind of holds it all together. I don't know if I got something backwards here or what's going on. Maybe the standoff's bent. Hang on a second, guys. Let me get this out of here. I think this thing's bent. So I may have to use the one that came with it. They're the same length. I don't know. Maybe I'll change it out later. I'll just use this for now because I know this one works. And I don't want this video to take forever. Just want to, like I said, I want to keep them 20 minutes long so nobody gets bored out of their freaking skull watching them. So, anyway, that slips right in there. Oh, I know what I was doing wrong. Actually, we'll go back to this red one. Sorry, guys. I actually have two of them here. Then we slip this guy on there, like so. Nice and easy. Insert the screw in there. A little bit. Then we have our two little cross plates that go on the top here. The bigger one goes in the front. Once I have the little cross member in there, I can just kind of pop this in. Sorry about my giant hands being in the way. See? Pop that in there. Then pop the back one in. The little butterfly goes in the back. And there's the canopy. I said that's part of the reason I chose this frame, was because of the design of this canopy. It kind of all like cross braces itself in there. So I have a feeling this is going to be really strong. And the other part that I liked about this build, other than the fact that my friend Sean Taylor was flying one when he was here, is look how that GoPro sits on there. Nice and low and tight, right? Isn't that awesome? Very cool. So the next thing we have is a VTX. And I went through a bit of a struggle with this thing. I'm not sure. Every frame maker out there doesn't seem to pay. Almost every frame I run into this problem. They don't pay attention. When I put this in there, it's going to be right in the way of my battery lead. So I have this one. I'm either going to mount it into the top of this frame here with the thing sticking out and try to put my battery lead. When we get to my battery lead, I'll make a decision whether I'm going to use this, or I have one that I modified here that has the antenna direct soldered on it, so I can just slide that in there and zippy tie everything up nice and tight. I actually tried to do a video on this to show you guys how I did this and modified it and put the antenna directly to the TBS Unify, but it was so tiny and so hard to solder and so hard to put the camera on, I couldn't do it. I tried, guys, sorry. So there's that. We got everything mocked up, and obviously our camera goes in there. So there's our frame assembled and ready to go. So that's that. Here's another cool thing. GEP RC, which is a local guy here. He actually has a website, geprc.com, but I don't know if he ships international. So if I want to, he makes these awesome little 3D printed mounts. So if I want to go Matty stunt style, I can just, right? See what I'm saying? Get a 60-degree tilt, and this frame has the nice that's part of the reason I chose it. It has a nice low profile and a nice easy way to strap a GoPro to it. Alright, so that's that. So next thing is going to be the camera. First of all, I don't need this. This came on there. So we're going to switch it out to the regular back, because this frame doesn't have the extra little sliders in it. Put those aside till later, till we get to wiring everything out. And like one of the first times I flew, right, I actually, it was like my second build, and the thing, I went up in the air and the thing was shaking all over the place, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on, and I went up and down on the PIDs, and it was driving me absolutely crazy. Of course, I didn't know too much back then, and what it was the sensor was loose inside of the camera. So that was like impossible to tune that out. I was like, you know, in horizon mode, hovering it in front of my face, and I couldn't see the quad shaking, but as soon as I flew, the thing was shaking all over the world. Oh my God. I was about ready to throw it in the trash until I figured out that it was just the stupid freaking sensor loose. Nowadays, they do put a little bit of a little piece in there to kind of hold it still, but I like to add another piece in myself just to be absolutely sure. I don't use the double-sided sticky tape, so that if I need to take the camera back apart or fix the case or anything like that, you know, blah blah blah, I can get it back apart without the sticky tape. You guys know what I'm saying. I use the one-sided weather stripping type foam stuff to hold it all still in there. So there's that. I'm going to smush it back down in there. And I know that camera's nice and tight in there now. Put my little tiny... I know that sensor's not going to be wiggling around. Here's the challenge of giant fingers. These little itty bitty teeny screws. And it's morning, so I just finished my coffee, so I'm a little shaky. So we're not going to thread that all the way in there yet until we get the second one going, because we don't want all the pressure on one corner to break the little case. So we'll get this one going down in there, and then I'll kind of walk them in. Again, be very careful with this because they'll strip out really easy. For me, I have to like really feather this in there on this part because of my hands. I'll strip these out so freaking easy. So there's that. We're over 20 minutes right now. So I'm just going to show you real quick. This is the 2.1 stock lens. And you see the back on that lens, how small it is. I personally, the 2.1's okay. A lot of guys like them, but I don't like the distortion in my goggles. I like to see what I'm seeing, you know. That's why I fly FPV. Part of it is for, not just for filming and whatnot. Part of it is for the experience of flying, right? So I don't want all kinds of distortion. So I use a 2.5 lens, like an aftermarket GoPro lens. I buy the little more expensive one so that it's got the nice lens on it, and the nice finish, and the nice big hole in there. If you buy the cheaper ones, you're not going to get the resolution out of the lens. And also make sure you get, I make sure I get the ones, see how big the back is on that? I can fly with this lens pretty much at night, in really low light conditions with no problem, because it lets so much light through onto the sensor as opposed to one of these lenses. So there's that. And now we're over the 20-minute mark. So excuse me guys, I got a bit of a cold. It's been raining for an absolute week here, and I've had to ride my motorcycle to work in the rain. But that's the way it goes here in mid-China in the summer. So when I put it in and focus it, I use a little bit of Loctite, but I'm not going to do that now because we'll wait till the next video, and I'll show you how I focus the cam and set everything up, and all the settings and stuff like that in the camera. So we're just going to screw that in there and leave it to the side for the moment until the next video. Alright, I hope that helped some of you guys out, and I'll see you in part 3.